everyone, and welcome to the Can We Ask You This podcast. My name is Corey.
And my name's Rosalind.
And we are so grateful that you would spend your time with us today. The Can We Ask You This podcast is a place to hear real stories from real people, gain perspective, get a little uncomfortable, and maybe even create some change. We want to hold space and give a voice to people who maybe they've been hurt by the church or wonder if they have a place in the church, and whatever their story may be. This podcast is about listening, learning, and truly seeing each person as invaluable in the eyes of God.
On today's episode, we have Matt, and he's a special guest. He's 23 years old and just went through a cancer journey. And he's in the moment right now as we record. He is still waiting to find out if he can be called in remission or if he has to go back for more chemo. And so it was an interesting story without a nice little bow on the end. And I think it's okay to hear those stories sometimes.
Yes, because we're all in journeys, and I love his openness and honesty with where he's at, what's been helpful, what's not been helpful as he's journeyed through cancer as a young person. Because I think if you're young, this is not on your 5-year, 10-year, 15-year plan.
Totally.
And so really grateful for him to share with us and give a little bit into his story. So yeah, grateful to have him on the podcast today.
Yeah, it was eye-opening for me to hear the ins and outs of what does it actually look like. You hear people going through chemo, and I didn't know what it really was like. And I just think about like myself at 23. I don't know if I could have handled this. So it's a great episode, very eye-opening. Even if maybe you're not as naive as me and you do know what it's like, still very eye-opening. Lots of great things to hear from Matt and how it affected his faith. It's really important.
All right, let's jump in. Hello, Matt. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, so glad that you could come, share a little bit about your story.
Of course.
And I think just for listeners, we'd love to hear about your story. Can you give us a picture of who Matt is? What's your world like? What's your life like to come to this point? Like, where did you grow up? What did you do? What kind of work did you do? Kind of who are you?
I was born in Calgary.
Okay.
Grew up here my whole life, but I lived in Australia for a couple years with
Wow.
YWAM. And that was a great experience, and it really grew my faith a lot to where it is, or where it was a couple months ago. It's grown since then.
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear about that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when I came back, I was working as a carpenter. When I kind of found out, I figured it out. I found a lump in my armpit and went to my family doctor and got an ultrasound, and kind of all went from there. So.
Okay, so just to back it up a little bit, if you've read the description of this podcast, you know we are talking about your cancer journey. But do you have siblings? Do you have tell us about your parents, your life, and kind of what was your faith like before you found out that you had cancer?
Yeah, so my parents, they were taking me to First Alliance here, so I'm very familiar with the church and the culture here. But yeah, grew up going to Discoveryland, learning about Jesus and all that. Went to GCA, and I also have 2 siblings that went to GCA.
Yeah, for those listening, GCA is our Christian school that's affiliated with FAC.
A fun fact about Matt is that his parents were in my mom's Bible study, and when he was born, I was old enough to kind of watch the littler kids, so they would send me down and I would look after Matt. So then the fact that you're an adult is so mind-blowing to me.
Wait, so you're saying you're Matt's babysitter?
Well, not no, he paid me. But
Okay, fair enough, right?
but yeah.
But yeah. Oh, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that.
So I'm a million. Anyway, go ahead.
But yeah, I mean, my faith coming back from YWAM, I understood trusting God. I'd seen him work in other people's lives a lot, and even in my own life to an extent, for sure. It had grown to that point after high school and after YWAM that, I understood all those things, and I had done a lot of Bible studying and that sort of stuff. But
okay, so let's move to this. You're putting on deodorant, and you feel a lump under there, and you're like, this is different. Go to the doctor. Kind of for you, what was that experience like? That's the start of your journey. Did you have any idea? Did you think it was cancer? Or did you? What were your initial thoughts?
actually, I wasn't even going to go to the doctor.
Okay.
Originally.
What did you think it was?
I just thought it was like a swollen lymph node or something. I wasn't concerned about it at all.
Were you
my
sick or just that?
No, completely healthy. Just noticed this lump, so I was like, if it doesn't go away in 2 weeks, I'll
Yeah.
go and get it checked out.
So who convinced you to go to the doctor?
Actually, my girlfriend did.
Okay.
And a couple days after I noticed that lump, I noticed a big lipoma, which is just like a lump of fat on my shoulder, but it's on the same shoulder that the lump was in my armpit. So that kind of scared me into going to the doctor a little
Okay.
bit. I was like,
Yeah.
what the heck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was quite large and it came out of nowhere. The lump
Yeah.
was completely fine, like it was completely benign. So
Okay, well that's good, but it
Yeah.
caused you to go find out.
yeah, so it was funny because a couple weeks after I actually went to the doctor, my lipoma that was on my shoulder, that got me to go to the doctor, I noticed it shrink a little bit, and they don't shrink as far as I'm aware.
So it was just literally God being like, how obvious can I make this? Please go to the doctor.
Yeah, it was like God's literal tap on the shoulder.
It's wild.
Yeah.
I want to know, what was it like? Because are you 23?
Yeah. I'm
Yeah, so you're
23.
like a young, healthy guy. What was it like to have the word cancer spoken about you? Because I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but that would be like out of nowhere. Like nobody would think that.
Yeah, no, definitely you don't plan for
Yeah.
plan for that, especially when you're young, when you get to be quite a bit older. I'm sure it's in your mind, like in the back of your mind,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you don't think that it's going to be you, right? Like, everybody knows somebody that has cancer, but I remember getting the phone call and your heart almost like sinks a little bit and you're like, okay, like
Yeah.
what's going on? How is this, like, God, what's your plan for this? Like,
Yeah, what were you feeling
So,
when that happened?
honestly, like scared and almost like a little bit disappointed because, through the whole process, that that's a possibility and like that's what they're concerned about. But when you actually like get that call telling you that, yeah, actually it is cancer, it's scary.
Yeah.
For sure.
Did you I feel like that would be so difficult to come to terms with that, right? You're like, no, like they must have it wrong. Like, I don't know did you think that? Like, or were you like, okay, this is, doctor said it, it's cancer. Now, how am I going to move forward? Like, how was your process in being able to move forward with that or accept that you have cancer?
I found it kind of harder to accept it like during the process. And,
Okay.
like, before I got that kind of definitive phone call, once I got that phone call, it was kind of like, okay, this is
your
real.
reality.
Like,
Yeah.
And at that point, you just want to kind of get started with taking care of it. You don't want to wait too much longer because it's like, okay, well, I mean, for me personally, my fear was like, where is it growing and I can't see it growing? Like, how bad is it getting without me knowing? Am I missing something? Is it getting bad? And
Yeah.
and I don't know. Like,
And what did they say? Like, what stage were you at? How bad was it?
I ended up only being stage 2.
Okay.
But the type of cancer I had, it's called Burkitt's lymphoma. If you Google it, it's going to be like a really aggressive cancer that grows like super fast. Your tumors can double in size in like days or hours.
Is that how
Like,
yours just
it's
sort of
insane.
appeared out of nowhere? Or
Well, actually, mine ended up being slow growing.
Okay.
And none of my doctors had ever seen
What?
Burkitt's lymphoma be slow
Wow.
growing before.
Okay.
My oncologist, who'd been practicing as a specialist in lymphoma for 15 plus years, had to call other oncologists across the country, like,
oh,
because there's a couple different treatment options, and so he was like, which one do you guys think is going to work? Because
wow.
he had never seen it before, so
Wow.
yeah, that was kind of a little gift from God.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
Okay, so you go see the doctor, you find out you have cancer.
Hmm.
What's next for your journey? Like, because now you're trying to figure out where is it? Like, if it's, where is it moving? What's next? So what was kind of your process through kind of determining where is the cancer, where is it spread?
So I actually, from that phone call, I had to wait about 3-ish weeks until I could get a PET scan, which is basically they inject you with like radioactive glucose, and then they have a scan that will detect where the glucose is kind of being used the most, and it can show normal organ function and stuff like that. And because cancer feeds off of sugar, it'll like highlight really bright on the scan.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they
Yeah.
overlay that with like a CT scan so that they can kind of tell what organ it's in. So went and had that. I got the call end of December, right before Christmas.
Oh, man.
And then had the scan mid-January. And even at that point, I was still waiting on a couple tests on my biopsy that I had had in December to determine what specific type of lymphoma I had. So I didn't even get that until the end of January.
Wow.
Can I ask, so that season of Christmas, of family, of holiday, what was that like for you coming out of this diagnosis?
And not really knowing anything, like how bad it was. What was that like?
It was interesting for sure because, I mean, the thoughts are going through your head like, am I going to be here next Christmas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You definitely get those thoughts, and it's pretty much impossible not to have them cross your mind at least once. So it was interesting in that way.
How did you
'Cause you never think
process
you're
that?
going to be in that position.
Or did you? Or was it just like...
Or is it very
Yeah.
fresh, which is
Yeah.
fine too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I even have processed all of
Okay.
it really. So.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of been the last month since I finished treatment has been for me is a lot of just processing, like, what the heck has this year been?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Could not have pictured this a year ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Even 6-7 months ago, I wouldn't
Yeah.
have imagined that this is how this year would have gone.
Yeah.
So
What was it like telling your family, or maybe just, I don't know, I imagine that you probably had to manage their feelings too. What was that like for you?
that was definitely the most difficult part for me, was telling people that care about me. So it took me a little while to tell my parents, a couple days after I originally found the lump, and they were concerned about it. I didn't tell them right away when I found it because I wasn't worried about it, but once I had had an ultrasound and they had told me they were concerned about it, I was like, oh, now I have to tell them. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, that was definitely hard because you do feel like you have to manage their emotions as well.
Yeah.
You don't want to.
Which is so funny. You're going through something difficult. It's so interesting. We all do that, right?
Yep.
You're going through something difficult and you have to manage other people's emotions and reactions.
I'm confident your parents wouldn't have wanted you to have to do that, but like that is just sort of naturally how it goes. Like you.
Because you also care for
Yeah.
your
Yeah,
friends and family.
it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
They care about you and don't want to see you hurting. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
when you're in a situation where, like, you get this really heavy news, you don't want to put that burden on them either, really. They reacted really well, which was helpful. So,
Yeah.
I
Now,
mean,
what
yeah,
was
I
their
know.
reaction, if we can? I know it's their story to tell, but just from your perspective too.
Obviously, they were concerned about it as well, but they both actually said shortly afterwards that they just had peace about it, like just that God was going to take care of it, which was, I mean, it's really nice to have parents that believe and can have that. It's calming for yourself too, to have
Yeah.
other people be like, yeah, no, I'm concerned about it, but
I think that's huge.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people that don't have parents that could speak God's peace over a situation. So what a blessing
Totally.
that was. That's very cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and even to see them definitely experiencing that peace, not just saying
Saying
it,
it. Oh, yeah,
like
for
trying to
sure.
comfort you,
Yeah. Yeah.
like very obviously experiencing it as well.
Yeah.
That's
so.
cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, shout out to your parents. So we kind of want to walk through your relationship with God, and you did highlight a little bit of it, but I would love for you to, if you could, talk a little bit more about your relationship with God previous to your diagnosis. And I think kind of like how that impacted getting the news and kind of your journey.
Through YWAM, I mean, you're completely support-based for 2 years when you're on staff. And so that kind of had really grown my trust in God to a point where hearing the news was still hard, but it was a little bit easier to be like, okay, even when you didn't feel like it, to tell yourself, like, God's got this, he'll take care of it. Like, and so that was really helpful for me to have grown my trust in God to that point and kind of understanding more of who he is and his character, and he will provide, and it will be okay. Doesn't matter what the outcome is. Like,
Yeah.
it'll be okay.
Everything will be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever think about the reality that, like you kind of said, maybe you won't be here next Christmas? Like, now it's looking very hopeful. Did you have to face that reality? And what was that like, if you did?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know how fast it was growing, and of course I made the mistake of Googling it and finding out that it was this.
Yeah.
That they were concerned about this really aggressive
Yeah.
cancer, and so, yeah, it definitely crossed my mind. I remember I had gone to Ontario to visit my girlfriend's family, and being on the plane ride back, we had landed and we were just waiting to get off, and I mean, the thought went through my mind, like, this could be my last plane ride ever. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's a bit of a scary thought because, I mean, being only 23, like, I want to live another 60 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
I enjoy my life. It's
How did your faith play into that? Like the concept of like, this is a possibility. Of course, it's a possibility for everybody. We don't actually know. You're facing this very real possibility. How did your faith play into that?
I think it was just something that was kind of a little bit easier to accept. Well, if that is the case, at least I'll be, I'll be in heaven. Like,
Yeah.
it also kind of played into it. Like, you start questioning yourself, is God actually done with me yet? And so for me, like, my answer was, I don't think so. I don't think he's done with me yet. And so that kind of is able to, was, for me at least, was able to calm those thoughts, because you're like, well, God's going to take care of it. If he's not done with me, I'm going to still be here in a year.
That
2
sounds
years.
like a lot of trust.
Yeah.
Like that you trust him a lot. That's cool.
It took a lot of trust. It was that first month, like kind of in January, it was hard to feel like I trusted God, but I just had to keep reminding myself that I did, and that he is faithful.
That is so true, though. Like sometimes you do have to tell yourself, even when you don't feel it. That's really good to remember. Yeah. Thank you.
So what does it feel like as someone, being young, healthy, going through this journey to face this diagnosis? What has that done for you? By all standards, as young and healthy, how have you kind of journeyed through your own like physical health even, and what that will look like in the future?
It's definitely changed my perspective on a lot of things. For sure, I'll be quicker to go to my doctor and not.
If there's a lesson here, right? Yeah.
You're not the only 23-year-old guy that's, oh, forget it. I don't want to go to my doctor. So it's a good lesson. Not a broad generalization, but I feel like lots of people in their 20s are like, well, I'm fine. I'm invincible. So it's a good lesson.
Yeah, it is a good lesson. Like, it never hurts to go and get checked out and just be told you're fine. I mean, it's the benefit of free healthcare
That's right.
in Canada. But yeah, so I'll definitely be quicker to do stuff like that and be proactively taking care of myself and covering my bases in that area when I notice things. But it's also kind of changed my perspective with, I think I would be way less willing to work overtime and extra hours and late and stuff like that, unless I absolutely needed to, because, just kind of showed me that it can, like, something can come up at any time that, you don't have that option to go home and spend that time with your family anymore, and you spent it all at work, and, your family's, they're the ones that are important, they're the ones that care about you. For the most part, some people are lucky enough to have a job that really does care about them, but for the most part, if I died tomorrow, my job's just gonna replace me. Like, they'll be sad, but they'll just fill a hole. Whereas your family, they can't do that. So
that's good. As we record this, you're still in the waiting. So how have you learned to wait, and what's it like to be in this waiting period?
To start with, it was really frustrating. That was probably the most frustrating part, was like, you want to get going and you want to get moving with it. Because like I said, when you don't know where it is, you're questioning, like, where is it growing? How bad is it? Like, am I just going to, like, keel over one of these days and be like, be like really sick all of a sudden?
Yeah.
So you're really anxious to, like, get moving. And that was probably the hardest part of the waiting. The waiting after treatment has been significantly easier, because you've done what you can so far to deal with it. That's made it significantly easier, but there's still an element of trusting God that it is gone, that he has dealt with it. And trusting, like, the medical system too. Like,
Have you played out both scenarios? Like, I put myself in your shoes. I think I would be, if it's gone, here's how I'll respond, and if it's not, here's what I'll do. Have you kind of done that in your own mind, or?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely thought through both scenarios to an extent, and I've tried my best to remain optimistic, and next week I will find out that it's gone, and been kind of planning on that. It'll probably be hard to hear again if it's not, and just what does that mean? Is it like, what does it look like from here? So, and that's the other thing, is that if it isn't gone, like, I don't know anything that's going to happen after that. So it's really, you can't plan anything around that.
Yeah, you kind of have to just sit there. You're waiting. Yeah.
And how have you kind of thinking of the unknown? Because I feel like a lot of your journey has a lot of unknowns to it. How have you journeyed in the unknown? I think just being honest, some of the hardships you faced in the unknown, but also what has helped carry you through the unknown?
Some of the hardships are just that whole, you have those doubts and questions in your mind where you're wondering, is this the end? Is it what is going to happen? How hard is it going to be? Like, what are my side effects going to be? And you have all those questions, and it is scary for sure. But what has definitely carried me through is that kind of being able to remind myself that, oh, God's going to take care of it, and He's faithful, and it's going to be a difficult couple months. It's not going to be easy, but God's got something to teach me in this, and He's got something for the people going through it with me too. Yeah, because it's not just me that that goes through it.
Yeah,
it's everybody that's close to me too.
Absolutely.
That's great. I would love for you to share a little bit about how this has impacted your relationships. I mean, we did hear about your parents. It sounds like there's someone else in your life. But yeah, like, and even just
so elusive.
but yeah, like, it's an incredible journey, and like you said, it impacts so many people. And I'd love for you to share how your cancer journey has, impacted some of your other relationships and what that's been like for you. Again, if you're willing to share.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very positively impacted a lot of relationships, and also negatively affected others. There were people that I thought in a situation like this would reach out and never did. I haven't heard from them.
Okay.
People that kind of expect, even one text message over 2 or 3 months of, and people that knew that what I was going through too. Whereas like relationships with my parents and my girlfriend are completely different, but in a good way, because you got through this hard thing together, and it really brings you together. Like it's
yeah. That must have been. We know Matt's girlfriend. We work with her. She's lovely, but that must have been really interesting because you guys had just sort of started dating a few months prior. And then it's almost like your relationship was like fast tracked. Most people don't think in the first year of dating that you're going to be going through this together. So how did that affect that specifically? I don't know if you want to talk about that, but
no, that's fine. It definitely, like you said, fast tracked it on like an emotional and spiritual level for sure. Because, I mean, there are married couples that have been married for 40 years that haven't gone through what we've done in the first 6 months.
Right.
So the rest of your relationship should be like breezy, probably, right? That's how it works. Get it out of the way.
It makes it seem like it will be that way, but
I did want to just ask, and sorry, this might be backtracking. What was the treatment process for you? I saw some pictures on social media. It looked like it was really hard. And can you talk a little bit about what it was like the nitty gritty of it? What was it like for you when you went in? What was the process? And was it painful? I mean, I assume it was, but I don't know.
Yeah. So going in for the first time, the hardest part about that was like, if you go into the hospital and you're feeling really sick, you're like, okay, like they're going to make me feel better. But I felt completely healthy going into the hospital, knowing that I was going to feel sick for the next 2 months.
That's so backwards.
Yeah. And
apparently it's good for you.
Yeah. And like you knew that you were sick, but you felt like I felt completely fine. So it was just a weird, you almost have to like convince yourself to go in when you're feeling completely healthy, knowing that you're sick, knowing that this is going to make you sick, really. So that was kind of a bit of a mental battle.
Yeah.
When you say sick, do you mean like nauseous or like in pain, or what does that mean that it would make you feel?
Like nauseous, tired. I got mouth sores at points. I got, just general exhaustion. At one point, there was like a day and a half where I didn't eat because I was just so nauseous. I just like curled up in a ball on my hospital bed and like.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And the very first day I was in there, part of my chemo was injected right into my spine. So I had a spinal tap.
Oh, I have not heard good things about spinal tap.
Well, even better, my first spinal tap was actually done by a resident. It was only like his second one ever, and he couldn't get it into my spine. He put me like 5 or 6 times. He actually bent the needle on my spine.
Oh.
Yeah, I saw the needle
Speaking
afterwards,
of
and it was like, yeah.
Oh,
so
that sucks.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's the best.
What happened next?
Well, that took like 45 minutes to do.
Which probably felt like 4 hours.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
My next 2 spinal taps were only like 15, 20 minutes at most.
Okay.
And we're way smoother.
Did they give you the resident because you're like young and they're like, oh, he can handle it more than like the 90-year-old next door? Not
Yeah.
to say that it's not easy either way, but just was that why?
Well, I guess so.
And they have to learn.
But
But
they asked me if I'd be willing to, and I said sure. And so I regretted that decision quite quickly.
you did this
Another thing to
yourself.
learn.
No,
Oh man.
I have a friend
practice.
who's a resident, or she was recently, and I'm like, so much respect because they're really great. But yeah, sometimes you need somebody with like a lot of practice. And,
Yeah. Yeah. And they have to learn somewhere, but that was
Yeah.
the extent of learning that I was willing to undergo.
learn somewhere else.
Yeah, you've contributed to the learning.
That's
Okay,
right.
now can you have someone who knows what they're doing?
That's nice of you, though. Anyway,
Yeah.
thank you to our doctors, by the way.
Yes. They greatly appreciate them.
Yep.
And yeah, that was just an unfortunate
Yep.
learning experience for both me and the doctor.
Well, at least your bones are strong. We know that much, so that's good.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
Yeah, so they did that.
From that, I actually got really bad lumbar puncture headache.
Oh.
And I basically laid down in my bedroom in the pitch black for like a week because the headaches were so bad.
Wow.
If I would sit up, they would get bad. Moving around, they would get bad. Not even just like you could move around for 5 minutes and then it would get bad. It would be like the second you sit up, you have this like intense pounding headache.
Wow.
And like they had given me like a bunch of Tylenol and told me to take Tylenol, and that it didn't touch
Didn't
it.
touch it.
Not even close. And even in the hospital, they had given me like codeine for the pain, and just still didn't budge. So
Wow.
It
And so,
was-
yeah, so you're convincing yourself to go to the hospital, and this is what's happening to you
Yeah.
when you felt fine. Yeah, no kidding. Nowhere near you had to convince yourself.
yeah.
Wow.
So, and I didn't even know the extent of it going in.
Well, that's good.
So,
Yeah.
like, you knew it was going to make you nauseous, but you don't really know how it's going to affect you because it affects everybody differently.
Yeah. If your results come back that it's not gone next week, is this the process again?
That would be my guess, yeah. But I really
Oh, man.
really don't know. But it would probably be more chemo and more lumbar punctures and
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost better not to know, I imagine.
yeah.
Yeah.
How much of your journey is, taking it one day at a time? Because I feel like sometimes, like, you're working appointment this day. This is, my life for the next how many weeks? A lot to take in, right? Like, it's just so much to take in. How did you live out the day-to-day life? Did you just take it one day at a time? Or how did you actually said that you're still processing some of this, so I respect that. But yeah, how did you work through each day?
I found it really helpful to just take it day by day. I remember it was like my first stay in the hospital was only like 3 days. And I remember getting to like the third day, and my girlfriend had come to visit me, and she goes, "Oh, we're already on day 3. There's only like 57 more to go." And I was like, "We're not
Like, get
counting
out.
like that."
It was 3 less than you had before.
Yeah, it was, and
Okay.
she was good intentioned, obviously, but I was like,
That's funny.
we're not counting like that because this is gonna take forever. This is
Yeah.
gonna seem like it takes forever.
Yeah, it was probably funny now, but probably really not funny at the time.
Yeah. Well, I laughed about it a little bit, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was like, and this was like right when I had just started getting the headaches, and like, it's
Oh,
like and she was trying to encourage me, and I was
Yeah.
like, no, that's not.
yeah. So to that end, we know that your girlfriend was well-intended, but what are some things people have said that probably also well-intended that are a little bit tone deaf, or that people say that are not helpful? And then also, what are some things that people can say or not say that have been helpful?
Definitely don't count by the days.
Okay.
Sure. Okay.
But yeah, I think just asking like what you can do. I had lots of people offer to bring me a coffee or what can I do?
This is helpful stuff.
And that, yeah,
Okay.
I found that really helpful. And even like there were people that cooked meals and stuff for my family, and that was encouraging to me to see them being supported when
Yeah.
like there wasn't even necessarily something that people could do for me. I found stuff like that helpful.
Mm-hmm.
For unhelpful things, I mean, you hear a lot of the cliche statements like, "Oh, you just need to trust God" and stuff. It's
Did you get a lot of the...
for the most part, yeah.
Yeah,
Like
okay.
lots of people well-intentioned reminding you, and it's both encouraging and like, yeah, I'd
Like, I know.
I'm trying.
I imagine
Yeah.
it feels a little dismissive.
yeah,
Yeah. Like, yeah, I know I am trying to trust God, but
yeah,
Doesn't take away from the fact that you have cancer and you're going
that
through
this
chemo.
is scary. Yeah.
And then it's scary and then it's hard.
yeah, for sure. So
Yeah.
it's both an encouraging reminder and like trying to
Yeah.
trying to.
Yeah.
at the same time. So it's...
What else can people do? Do you think if there's anything that didn't happen that would have been helpful? It would be great for, I think, for myself, for Corey, for our listeners to know, okay, how do you support somebody that's on a cancer journey?
I mean, for me, I had visitors all the time in the hospital. That was great for me because I'm super extroverted, so I love having people around and having that distraction and being able to talk to people, or even just having the option to talk to people was really helpful for me. But I know other people that are like, when they're not feeling well, they're like, get out, go away.
Yeah.
So I think really the best way to know is, instead of trying to do something specific, like just asking what's going to be the most helpful for a person going through it, because it's really a unique experience for everybody. Some people feel really sick through chemo, and others will have a much easier time with it, and I kind of had a combination of both.
So I guess I want to ask you if you could talk to yourself, before all of this happened, and if you were to give yourself a piece of advice.
Ooh, that's good.
What would you say to yourself?
A piece of advice for myself in the middle of the diagnosis process?
Yeah. Or someone that is at the beginning of their journey, so to speak, diagnosed, has a lot to go through. The journey is still unknown. I know it's still unknown for you in a way, but what would you say to them? As someone who's gone through the journey, I mean, you're still on your journey, obviously, but what would you say to them?
I would probably just tell them to just take it one day at a time, because that's really all you can do. And each day presents itself a different challenge. And a different way that you're kind of pushed into. You either trust God or you don't, and having to make that decision each day. Because, I mean, you don't know what the next day is going to look like. You don't even, when you wake up in the morning, you don't know what today's going to look like outside of when you're actually getting treatment. You have a schedule of when you're going to get what drug and stuff like that, but you don't know how you're going to feel. And even through my different rounds, like round 1 was difficult because of those bad headaches, and then I got bad nausea with the second part of my round. But round 3 was quite a bit easier. I had significantly less side effects. I knew how to stay on top of them better, and you kind of learn as you go. And so each day that's the best advice that I received, actually, from somebody who had gone through it. That was very helpful.
I imagine it's like hard to trust God. It's one thing to say, yes, I trust God, overall, but what does it look like moment by moment? Like, were there moments where it was really hard and you're like, I don't know, or did that push you closer to trusting God more? Like, how did that work?
It was like a combination of both. There's those moments where it is hard to trust God, and then you realize that, well, I don't really have a choice.
Yeah, what's the other option?
Like the other option is trying to do it on my own, and well, I'm kind of in over my head right now.
Like, God, I need your help because I don't know what.
Like, I don't know what's going on right now. I don't feel good. I don't want to do this, and the only way I'm getting through this is if you get me through this. So I definitely remember there were moments where I was like, hey, this is enough of this.
No kidding. Yeah,
don't want. And when you get a side effect, like, you don't know how long it's going to stay for. Sometimes you get nausea and it's for 2 hours and then you're good. And then there were times where it was a couple days.
Oh man, you've gone through a lot.
Yeah. And there was even like weeks where you would have mild nausea, where you just feeling off.
That's the worst. Well, not the worst, but it's pretty terrible.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It wasn't fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and for being with us today. Just as a kind of an open-ended question, is there anything that you would like to share on your heart with our listeners, or anything else that hasn't been said that you'd like to share?
I was talking on Saturday with some people about it, and just about how, as hard as it was, I don't think I would go back and change it. I would do it again.
Wow.
Which is weird to say, but just the changes I've had to make, and my perspective changes, and the way I've had to trust God, and honestly even see Him work in my own life has just been really positive. And I think it'll have a big impact on the way I live the rest of my life.
It's beautiful.
That is.
And so, as hard as it was, there was a lot of good that I've already been able to see in my life from it. So
that's like, I don't ever want to say cancer is a gift, because I think, it's awful.
Yeah.
But what a gift to have a perspective shift at 23, when you have the rest of your life whatever that looks like ahead of you, like to really take each day. I think people spend their lives not knowing that lesson, to take each day as it is.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
Thank you, Matt, for sharing with us. It was just an honor that you would be in this place with us to hear your story and to share some of your journey. And for people who have gone through cancer treatment, chemo, and everything, but also for those of us who haven't, and how we can learn to listen, to ask questions, to create space where hopefully we can be helpful on someone's journey. And also really appreciate how this journey, as terrible as it is, to see the positive out of it and how this journey has changed your perspective. It has created long-lasting impact, but also just the being able to see the positive out of something so tragic. So yeah, I think for me, being able to be reminded of how precious each day is really important. But also if I have friends or family members going through cancer, just being able to have the courage to ask, how can I help? Like, I think some people don't really realize, they get nervous, what do I say? What do I do?
Yeah.
But it's okay. It's okay to ask help. And every person's different,
Yeah,
hearing that, Matt, come hang out,
Yeah.
be by my bedside. Let's chat. And for other people, I know that's probably not exactly what they want.
But I like that he said, like, just even send a text. Like, he was surprised that some people didn't send texts. And then there were some people that did show up. And I think sometimes we undervalue how important just that connection point is. Even if you feel uncomfortable, it means a lot, I think, to somebody that's going through cancer. So
Yeah, to be able to walk into space. And because I think about friendships. It's like if we're journeying through life together, like, you want to be with someone and support them and be a part of their journey. And I think that's where it becomes, like, whether it is sending a text and being able to ask how they're doing, even if it's, we got to be okay with being uncomfortable. And I think that's why I love this podcast, is being able to create space of knowing that, sometimes life is uncomfortable, but we can do it together. And there's good things that can come out of journeying through hard things together.
Yeah. And I love, kind of said this earlier, but the one day at a time thing, like, just what a gift to know that at 23 years old, that every day is a chance to trust God and is a chance to spend time on what actually matters in life, and to just, moment by moment, day by day. I think that's such a good lesson for everybody. And what a gift that Matt can say that, sitting here waiting for results, just day at a time.
Yeah.
So really cool. Thank you, Matt, for sharing your story.
Thank you, Matt, for sharing your story. Glad we were able to share a space together. Thank you, Matt.
By the time you were listening to this, listeners, Matt has given us permission to post an update about where he's at, what his results were that he will have received the week after we recorded this. So you can check the show notes for that update. And then you can also check the show notes for any resources that we've got that we can put in there. You can email us at podcast@faccalgary.com if you've got feedback or questions, things you want to talk about. We would love to email you back. And you can also on Spotify leave a comment. Let us know what you thought of the latest episode. What do you think of this one?
We always appreciate when you share your comments with us on Spotify. It's really great. You can just write in what you thought about the episode, and you can leave reviews on Apple Podcasts. And on episode 15, Forgiving Your Abuser and Overcoming Childhood Sexual Abuse and Discovering Hope, we had someone share, name's Dyson Mayer. She said, Kathleen is someone that has so much courage. She is no longer in a prison of her own emotion, mentally and spiritually. And so just thank you. Thank you, Dyson Mayer, for sharing that comment. And on any of our episodes, you can leave a comment on Spotify, what you thought of the episode. We'd love to interact with you. You can email us at podcast@faccalgary.com. Again, this will be in the show notes. And we love chatting. We love connecting with you, our listener. Some of you have dropped in here if you're here in Calgary, and it's been so great to connect and hear how the podcast has encouraged you on your journey. So we appreciate you listeners for being with us on this journey.
And we appreciate our lovely editor, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Good grief. He had his work cut out for him on this episode because Matt kept saying great things after we stopped recording. So we had to keep jumping back on. So thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. We appreciate you. Thank you, listener, for being with us. And
until next time,
friends.